subscribe to our YouTube channel, Joy Learning TV.
Hello, our lovely viewers and students across the nation, watching us from the comfort of your home or anywhere. Yeah, welcome to our exciting classroom in biology. You're on SHSR on Joy Learning. I'm going to be your facilitator, Sir Kwame Amwate, taking you through a Form 2 topic in elective biology titled Phyla of Kingdom Plantae. So the word is Phyla of Kingdom Plantae. Our specific objectives is that at the end of the lesson, you should be able to align the major divisions and classes of Kingdom Plantae. The second is to describe the characteristics of the major divisions and classes of Kingdom Plantae. Yes, let me go back and explain something. You see the title is Phyla. But when you get to plant, we use the word division. So, if you see it at phyla, you can say, but the right word is division of Kingdom Plantae. So, in the question, in the exams, if they should come with this, but they usually come with the division word. In all the 5 kingdoms, in all the 4 out of the 5 kingdoms, we use phylum. For the next division and a kingdom, it's only plant that we use division. So note it. Before we go on to the division, let's recap what makes a plant be classified as a plantae. The first is that they are multicellular. Now, I believe at this stage you understand multicellular. An organism with many different types of cells in the body. What about eukaryotic? Aside from protista, fungi, and we are now on plantae, all the organisms are eukaryotic. Means that content or organelles within our cells are all bounded by a membrane. For an organism to be classified as plant, we give this general rule: they possess roots, stems, and leaf. Though it's questionable, or majority, over 90%, have this root, or have root-like, stem-like, or leaf-like. As you go along, you understand why. So, in general default, all of them have these structures. The walls, the cells have an extra cover around their cell membrane. We call the cell wall. Like in bacteria, we have peptidoglycans. In fungi, we have chitin or chitin. Here, the makeup of the cell wall is cellulose. And once you contain cellulose cell wall, classify as a plant. In addition, they will have chlorophyll, which is found in a structure called chloroplast. That's the organelle. And once you have this, you have the ability to make your own food. They may reproduce both sexually or asexually. Some may have to use the 2 at the same time, others will only need 1. Then in addition, they store excess glucose as starch. So with this knowledge, just recapping what we did under the general kingdoms, let's look at the 6 divisions per syllabus. I'm using the word per syllabus, so there may be more than this in certain textbooks. Our syllabus is the major divisions. Not all the divisions, the major divisions. The words are big, but you notice that there's a word phyta, Phyta, at the end. As you go along in biology, you should be picking these cues. If there's a cyst or Cyte, then you're talking about cells. If it's ascomycota, the cotas are fungi. So in plant, use phyta for plant. So the 6 groups are Bryophyta. Can repeat in the house after me. Lycopodophyta. The third is Phylloxenophyta. The fourth is Coniferophyta. The fifth is Cycadiophyta. And the sixth is the angiospermophyta. So now that you can pronounce these big words, let's start with the first group, Bryophyta. Let me show you pictures of Bryophyta before I start even talking about it. This is an example of a Bryophyta organism in a natural setting. You can see something popping up with a flat body down there. We'll describe all this. A diagram form of what you just saw in a picture, hand drawing, is what you are seeing on the screen. So, this is the natural one you see in the environment. You will see a flattened body, which I'm tracing out. Then at a point, you see something that looks like an umbrella shooting up. So the flattened body is what actually brings us the word, the liverwort. Looks like a liver. The design looks like a liver. What pops up as the umbrella is dependent on time, but we'll come back to that. Then I'm going to give you a hand drawing of the same green structure I see on the camera with this. So what you just saw have been simplified into this. So that thing that looks like the umbrella, you can still see it. Then you can see the flattened body. Then you can see some things shooting up underneath it. So there's a lower side and there's an upper side. We'll come back to all this. Another picture of another group of bryophytes is the moss plant. As you go along, you also will look at the mossy plant. So let's go on. So with this idea, let's start with the Bryophyta. First, they live at damp or moist environment. The place has to be moist. So if you live at a dry place, I'm sorry, you hardly see such organisms. Then when you go to thick forest, on the base or the foot of tall trees, near river or stream banks, or even on moist rocks, you will see these organisms. They are very, very small. As much as the drawing look big, they are very, very small. They are clumped together. So they mostly range from less than 2 centimeters. Check your ruler and look for 2 centimeters. They are less than, the whole structure is less than 2 centimeters. And some can go as far as 20 centimeters. Yes. They are plants, but they lack true roots. We use the word true roots. Means that they cannot absorb water, do not have vascular tissues in them. They are not true stems. Same, they don't have vascular tissues. They don't have all the cells that we need to classify as a proper stem. They have something green, but it's not a leaf, but it looks like a leaf. So we say leaf-like. Now the root nature, or what I said that looks like a root, is not a root, but functions like a root. It makes the organism anchor itself in the soil so that you cannot easily dislodge it. That root is called rhizoids. That root-like structure is called rhizoids. And remember, we had rhizoids under fungi too. So that root-like structures are called rhizoids. They are just for anchorage, not for absorbing anything. Because if they want to absorb something, because the plants are not connected by tissue, each area absorbs its own minerals, water, and whatever they need. So the entire body, we said, is so tiny that when a drop of water falls, that drop of water will be absorbed directly into either the leaf or the roots will just pick them. Sorry, the root don't pick them. Only the leaf-like structure will pick them. In addition, they do not fruit nor flower. So we call them seedless plants. So somebody will ask, if you are seedless, then how do you reproduce? We'll be looking at that shortly. So in reproduction, bryophytes usually have what we call gametes, the thing you saw as umbrella, one will be the anteridium. Let me show you a picture of it. So on the top here are the positions of the productive organs. Look at this one too, the production organ. Then you see something here as Gimma. We'll come to that. Then look at the design of this particular one. Look at how it's spread out. It's different from the one on your right here. You will see that we call one egg producing stalk, another one sperm producing stalk. So the flattened body on the ground there will have these structures growing up. We call them the anteridium and the archegonium. We'll come deeply into that. So the top, the anteridium, then archegonium. What holds them is the anteridiophore and archegoniophore. The entire structure is called the sporophyte because it will contain spores and produce spores. So now that I have an idea of this, let's go back to our notes. So on reproduction, and we are saying that the male that you just saw, the female that you just saw, they need a film of water so that the sperms can swim in that water to the females, so that they can fertilize the egg produced in the females. It then presupposes that if there's no water, they will get into trouble. Remember that the body is small and they need water to be absorbed through. In addition, they need water for the sperms to move to fertilize the female. So if they don't live at moist environment, then they cannot survive these two conditions. So you hardly find bryophytes in dry places. They also show what we call alternation of generation. I just spoke about the spores being formed. When the spores form, they will burst or break and open and fall on the ground. Then they will grow back to new plants. The new plants are the gamete producing stages. We call them gametophyte. Yes, they are those that will produce structures that will also contain the gametes. In view of that, there's a stage that we have the gamete producing. Then they will produce whatever is on top of it, the sporophytes. Then they would also produce the spores. So they have to have these two life cycles before one organism is given birth to. Because of that, we say they show alternation of generation. Alternation of generations. So they alter their generation from one phase to the other. And the one that I usually see around, you say the ones that stay for long, dominate for a long time in the habitat, is what we call the dominant phase of a plant. And for them, the gametes, the green ones we see, the gamete stage is very dominant. The spore producing is very short stage. So we say the gametophytes are the dominant phases. Then the sporophyte that will grow will be attached to the gametophyte, take all the nutrient or food and everything they want from the gametophyte till they grow. These are the classes of division bryophyta. Division bryophyta. Common books, you have these three. But in a high school level, we only deal with the first two. Class Hepataceae, sometimes called liverworts. Then the class Muci, sometimes called mosses, the one mostly we treat in class. Then the class Anthoceratae, the honeywort. Mostly we don't talk about this third one. Let's take a quick look at Hepataceae. So Hepataceae was the drawing I was using to show to you at the initial stage. You see that they were flattened, almost like a paper on your table, and has a liver shaped. That entire body of the flattened with the rhizoids under it is called the thallus body. So let me show it to you again. So this is liverworts, liver shape. It is flattened and has rhizoids under it. This whole body is called a thallus. And you saw them dividing. Once you divide in biology, we say dichotomous branching. Some may have midribs, others, you saw a midrib in the middle, but the midrib does not conduct any fluid. Then it is green, as you saw. So green means that they contain chloroplast. But they don't have the pyrenoids we saw in the Spirogyra group that will be used to store starch. They may have different structures for storing starch. And they also have small oil droplets in their body. The drawing you just saw has two sides. The sides we saw the rhizoids coming from and the top part. So we keep referring to our picture once a while. So there's this top part and there's this down part. So there's the top part and the underside. So it's on the underside we have the rhizoids for anchorage. And we have the top part, you see something as Gimma on it. So on the upper side is where we generate the antheridium and archegonium. Again, if I mention, I'll go back to the picture. So these male and female structures growing there are the antheridium and archegonium. So they'll be containing them here. Then the upper side has a raised region which forms a chamber with a large pore. So you see this side raised up a little bit and have this chamber with holes in them. They are called the Gimma Cap. During asexual reproduction, spores are already found or produced in this. When water splashes on them, this Gimma will fall, will be splashed out and fall on the ground, and they will go through another life, forming a green gametophyte. So this one, they didn't need two parents to meet, to fertilize anything. The spores were produced by cells around on their own. So it's an asexual reproduction. But those formed at the top here will be involved in sexual reproduction. So that is what we have. The rhizoids are unicellular on the underside. And I've spoken about the reproduction. The asexual reproduction I just explained was the Gimma formation in Gimma Cap, which is, but the main asexual is the fragmentation. That something happened and the leaves will break into pieces. Each one falling on its own will grow back to a full organism. So such a thing is called fragmentation. Then the top that we saw where the males and females meet. Then they will fertilize, form a sporophyte on top. The sporophyte will grow. Then each of them will have a capsule at the end, break and fall on the ground. So we've looked at sexual reproduction already. So the antheridium and archegonium. Example of liverworts is the pilia, the macantia, and lophocolia. These are common liverworts. The one that mostly we mention is the macantia. It's so common liverwort. The one I'm showing on your pictures are all examples of these types. Now their brother, the moss. These are very tiny plants. Very, very tiny plants. About 1 to 2 centimeters in height. They look like Cuphead grass. If you ever come across, they look like Cuphead grass. And they are just stuck together. Tiny things stuck together. Those stuck together are the green plant you are seeing, but that is the stage that would have the male and female sex organs in them. So once you have the male and female sex organs in you, we say you are a gametophyte. So we have male gametophyte and female gametophyte. And they produce the antheridium and the archegonium. These are the spores. So these are the sex gametes that will fuse to form a sporophyte. Now, when they grow, the mature gametophyte will have spirally arranged leaves with midribs. Tiny, tiny leaves. We say tiny, tiny, tiny leaves with midribs. So I think the caption is wrong. It's supposed to be musi or mosses. So this is an example of a moss. Look at it. We have a male and a female moss. They will grow tall, and you see a stalk developing on top of them. It's the female that you see them having a stalk. Why? Because females that get, in quote, pregnant. So the males, after a rainfall, will release its sperms from the antheridium here, and they will swim, which has tails, so we say biflagellated sperms. They will swim and come and fertilize the females here, which is the archegonium. Once the female is fertilized, as they get pregnant, they will give birth to something we call the sporophyte. So this whole structure is a sporophyte. And at the tip of the sporophyte is a capsule that contains spores. These capsules will break at the right time when they are matured and fall to the ground again and grow back to this gametophyte structure. So that means for us to get a new gametophyte, we need to fertilize two things, grow another new structure called a sporophyte. That's the second life cycle. They will burst and fall on the ground and start all over. So they need to change from one stage to the other. So you say alternation of generation. One generation is the gametophyte, the other generation is the sporophyte. So I hope you've seen some of this. So we are saying that their leaves are spirally arranged, very small leaves. Very, very small leaves, and they are arranged spiral. So one here, one there, one there, one there, and that order goes as spiral arrangement. So that is all about the musi you should know. Example is the sphagnum, another is the funaria, another is the neum, another is the branchimanium, and these are common examples around us. I've also explained the reasons why bryophytes should be found in only moist or damp habitat. So they need egg. They need what we call water for swimming, and they need to absorb all this water through their body. Let's go to the next group called the club moss, division Lycopodophyta. Again, let me start with pictures. There is an example of a club moss. Take your time and look at the next picture again, a little bit in depth. And let me use this one to explain everything about this group. First of all, you see roots, but these are proper roots that can absorb water into the body. So if work for anchorage and absorbing water, that means if they can trap and transport, that means they have vascular tissues. Then this, you see their stem horizontal on the ground and some branching up. So most times you see we have horizontal stem. In addition, on the stem you have leaves growing. But these leaves are divided into two regions. The green part you see down here, which are smaller like the moss we saw, and the top one that is arranged like a cluster around here like a club, called the strobilus. Each of the leaves there will contain, or on the surface will be spores. Yes, the spores we saw in musi that will break out at the sporophyte are rather on the leaves there. So the strobili have leaves that contain spores. And that whole thing group there, the cones, the spores, is called the strobili. And we have the ones that do not contain, which are the normal leaves here. They do not contain the spores. So these are the proper leaves. So you can see the leaves proper and the clustered leaves that contain the spores, which I have circled at the top. On your left, it's a proper club moss in nature, how they look like. So if you're walking around and see something like this, you're looking at a club moss. So all that I said, we said they are vascular plants with true roots, stems, and have small spirally arranged leaves. The stems are either branching or unbranched, as you saw in the picture, and they may grow upright or horizontal. I have also mentioned that there are two types of leaves. The green one we saw, which are just spiral arranged like the mosses, and the one that has been clustered together with the spores on them, we call them the sporangium. Spores are contained in sporangium, so we call the whole leaves the sporophylls. And the sporangia bearing leaves that are clustered together into something we call cones or strobila or strobilus. The dominant phase I've explained in every organism, the one that stays for long and is domineering in the life cycle of the organism. In this one, the sporophyte is the dominant stage. Example is Selaginella and Lycopodium. The name Lycopodium and Selaginella. These are the common club mosses around us. Now let's look at our favorite friend, Phylloxenophyta, fern. I put in bracket the pteridophytes. Where do ferns also live? Hard to find them in dry places. If you have palm tree, which are a lot of palm tree around, the place will be moist. You will see some green plants shooting up at the base or the sides of the palm tree. And we are talking about ferns here. So the place has to be damp or moist to allow them to grow. Here they have proper roots, they have proper stems. But the stem is underground, and underground stems are called the rhizomes. Their leaves are usually big or broad, and we call them fronds. So let's take a picture of a fern and come back. So there's a picture of a fern, the fern I'm trying to describe. So these are roots. These are adventitious roots. Here we are not using the word rhizoids, these are adventitious roots. And this is the stem, the entire stem I'm talking about. This short thing is the entire stem, fixed in the ground or in the palm tree. And this big or long thing is the leaf. Don't think this is a stem. No, this is the main midrib or vein that is holding the leaflets. So what is here is the leaves. Then at some point in time, look at this picture. You see some dot things at the back of the leaves called the sorus. And these ones contain the spores, which later will mature, burst, and fall down and form what we call the prothallus. And so on this we have males are down and females are at the top. So females there, when water falls on them, the males will burst and swim to the female. The males also are called the antheridium. Females are called archegonium. The same words we've been seeing or coming across. So this is the picture of the fern I'm talking about. So now we can describe it better. So the compound leaves, you've seen them, is called fronds. Then you've seen the underground stem, is characteristic of all of them. The young ones have something we call is a rolled up fiddlehead leaves. It's rolled up like that. Then I've shown you the sorus. At the back of the leaves are these dotted things, which looks brown or dark brown, and they contain the spores. And we call them the sorus. Now the spores are contained in structures called sporangium. So a picture again of this. So this whole thing is the sporangium, which will burst and the spores inside will fall on the ground. They also undergo alternation of generation. As you've seen, this big plant, the whole plant here, which is the sporophyte stage, will produce spores at the back of this side, at its back, and the spores will burst, fall to the ground, then grow to a prothallus. So the spore producing stage will produce a gamete producing stage. That's the heart structure, which I've written Pteridon archegonium. So that stage is different from the big plant. So the big plant, the sporophytes, have to give spores and go to another stage of a plant-like structure called the prothallus, which is the gametophyte. Then when they fuse, they will grow back this big plant. So that means to get this big plant, you have to go to another stage before we come back to the big plant. So it's like two stages of reproduction. The spore producing the asexual and the gametophyte produce gamete that fuses by sexual reproduction. So we need both asexual and sexual reproduction before one life cycle is completed. And we term it the alternation of generation. We actually define it as a process of a life cycle where gamete producing stage, gametophyte, will alternate or change with spore producing stage, the sporophyte, for one complete life cycle to take place. Example is the Pteridium, Biopteris, Felix, then Cyclosaurus, and Cycathia. These are examples of ferns. We'll go to the next organism, the Coniferophyta, what we call the Christmas tree. In Ghana, eyes in Africa or tropic, eyes don't look like a Christmas tree, but the one on your right, when it's cut well, looks like the Christmas tree they use. Now this is common. You've seen this in Africa. These are the pine. It's not a pineapple there. These are some cone-bearing structures. So now that you've seen a picture of a conifer, let's go to what conifers are. Look at the leaves well. The leaves looks like tiny threads. So we refer at needle-like leaves, and they are always green. The whole year round, they look green. So we say they're a green plant. Now, when you hold them, it looks like rubber because the leaves have wax around it to prevent water loss. So they don't lose water easily. So they always have water for photosynthesis. Also, they do not have fruits or they do not flower. All those that do not flower but have seeds, but the seeds do not have cover, are called the gymnosperms. So conifers belong to the gymnosperm group. Now the sex organ that are used for reproduction, we've seen the moss type, the fern type, the club moss type. Now they have what we call the cones. So these are the cones. And these cones, or the thing that looks like the small pineapple, are what we have the spore producing structures on them. So they will fertilize and produce seeds. These seeds are not covered, like the way you have, let's say, orange seeds in something. You have pear covered in something, pepper covered. Their seeds are exposed. So we call them the naked seeds. And they belong to what we call the gymnosperms. Example of conifers are the pine, the redwood, the Douglas fir, the spruce, and the cypress. They are very tall trees. They are mostly used for wood making, paper making. And usually when you watch films, the Christmas tree where they cut it from are conifers. So we've seen much about conifers. Let's look at Cycad, Cycad. You would have mistaken a certain palm tree to look like a tree, rather to look like a palm tree. Usually we have the tall types. That's not the one, not the dates ones. These are very short, slightly taller than my height, not so tall. But I look at it as a palm tree. But the palm trees have big trunks, but these have slender trunks. But the palm-like thing only shows up at the top. Only at the top. So the palm-like leaves pop up at the top. Then you see something growing inside, like what we just saw in the conifers. This is the cones. This is what we call the cones, where male and female are produced. So these are the trunk scales. They have scale-like parts. So let's look at the description. So we say that they have crown of long compound leaves which are clustered only at the apex of a thick, usually short and unbranched scaly trunk. So the trunk we saw have scales around it. They are also short. The whole plant is short. And we said that the leaves only is formed at the top, as you saw on the picture. The thing I circled, the cones. So they have cones which are born only at the top of the plant, as you saw in the picture here, only at the top, among all the leaves. And they contain the sexual reproduction organs. So male and female cones. We have a whole male plant with its own cone, a whole female plant with its female cones. So how would they fertilize? They are not close by. So the spores will travel. That's what happens. They will travel by help of, when it breaks out, they will travel, they will fall on the female. So they are not going to use water, normal wind. Then they lack flower and they lack fruits. When they make the seeds like the conifers, they also are not covered. So we say they are gymnosperms because seeds are not covered. The common example we have with Cycad diophyta is the word cycad. The plants are called cycad. The example I have is called cycad, and they are just species differences. So most they are cycad. The last group we look at is angiospermophyta, the flowering plant. Probably you've seen these plants around your houses. The normal grasses, you've seen all of them. Now these plants have flowers, like what I'm showing you here. They have flowers at a stage in their life. They will produce the male and female gametes, that's the pollen grain and the egg or the ova. Then they will fertilize later and produce maybe a seed. That the seed is covered in something, so it's a covered seed. That's why we call the angio. The angio means a case, and the sperma means seed. The geno means naked, and the sperma means seed. So the geno means naked seed. The angio means seed in a case, so a covered seed. So we say that the seeds are protected in an ovary. Then they have very good efficient transport system. You see a root down here, the tap roots, anchoring the plant to the soil, getting water through the whole plant. And the dominant phase of the organism, this whole phase is the spore producing stage. So it doesn't produce typical spores we say, but the stage that will produce the flowers. And the flowers are the gametophyte stage. And flowers come once a while in their life. It's not every day you see flowers. So season they come. So because the gametophyte usually do not come every time, it's not persistent throughout the life cycle. Then the one that persists through this one is called the dominant phase, and that is the sporophyte. There are two major classes of this group. We have the monocotyledonia, the monocots, and class dicotyledonia. We'll start with the monocots, the grasses that we all know around. If you look at the root of this grass and the root of this one, see that these ones are very big, we call them the tap roots. While these ones are very small, we call them the fibrous roots. So I'm describing it with the differences. You see that there is points here where the branch starts. We call them the nodes. And the distance between a node and the other is called the internode. Here you hardly find it. If you try to pull one like this, there's no node on it. It rather have to come down. So we say this is like a sheet covering the stem. So this is called a leaf sheet. So they have leaf sheets, not nodes and internodes. Their leaves are also simple and very long, as we see here. And the veins there are para veins. They don't have this type of many veins which are branching from the base here, and you see smaller ones in between them. The small ones are called the smaller veins, but they are networking between this big one and the other, let me say, semi-big ones. So we say that it's a network of venation. This is a network of venation, while this is a para-venation. So monocots have para-venations. Dicots have network or reticulate venations. So this is a monocot, this is a dicot. So go around, look for a leaf. Just use the leaves first. And once you pluck it, you see that the base also have the same, the roots following the same ideas. This is a fibrous root, and this one is a tap root. So those coming from this group is a tap root. The flowers they show are brightly colored and conspicuous. You can easily see them. But these ones, they also may give us sometimes something like a flower. Hardly do they flower in that sense of pure flower, where it shows different colors. They are not showing. So sepals, petals are always similar in color. They are green. So we say parenth. The parenth are similar. Then somewhere here, there was a seed being produced. Okay, let's go on. There's a seed produced in one of these clusters here. So that is the monocot we just saw. Fibrous roots, sepals and petals are not differentiated, so hardly to see a proper brightly colored flower. Flowers, if they should be dead, like these flowers here, if I should take my time and count them, this should be about 8 or 10 flowers, petals going around. If you come to this, if they are not 10, they will be 5. So multiple of 5 will be 10. Multiple of 10, multiple of another 5 will be 15. For dicots, they are either in 4s or 5s, and they can be multiples of 8, 10, 12, or 15. That's why you see plenty colors going around. Here, if they should have any flower showing, they are only in 3s or multiples of 3. So from 3 to 6 to 9, that's how they appear. So this is what we say the multiples. Okay, we don't have flowers here. So examples of monocots are grasses, the cereal crop like maize and guinea corn, the onion, the lily, the palm tree, the plantain, and the bamboo. Yes, plantain. Palm tree and plantain, if they should push them so that they fall, you look at their roots, they are very tiny. They are not roots that go deep like your mango tree. Then we have already also looked at the dicot. What actually brings a difference between a dicot and a monocot is what we call the seed leaves or the monocotyledon. If you have a beans and you divide it into 2, each half you see is a cotyledon surface. But if you have a maize, you cannot cut a maize or use your hand to break a maize into two equal halves. So the whole cotyledon is in one structure. Yes, the whole thing we eat is the cotyledon. The cotyledon is what usually keeps depending on the type of plant, they may have the seed, the food in it, or maybe the region that contain the embryonic structures. So dicot, a typical simple thing is the beans when you open into two, granite when you open into two. So almost all the dicots have two surfaces, the cotyledonia, and the monocot has one. As we said, dicots have broad leaves, as we see, not long parallel leaves. Vascular bundles, this one is a little bit deeper, are arranged in stems. So dicot can grow big, like mango tree, like the flamboyant. But usually, monocot, the stems are small. Though the palm tree looks big, it's not the real stem. The real stem is in the middle. The plantain is not that big because you have leaves covering it plenty. The stem is small. So dicot stems are very big, and we said that they have tap roots that you've seen on your screen. Then examples are the mango tree you see around, the pepper, the beans, the yam, the silk, the cotton tree, the flamboyant, all those that you've seen. So mostly in Form 2 or Form 3, we will take you through flowering plant where we will delve deeper with a lot of examples. So on your screen is the last picture for today's lesson, trying to show the difference between monocot and dicot. So on your right is your monocot leaves, that's your maize, and your left is the crotalaria plant, having all that I discussed. Since it has been a journey today, a marathon of big words, plants that you see around today, I hope that I've made you appreciate some of them. Go around and look for monocot and dicot. If you live in a moist environment, not like the city in Accra where it's very dry, or go to places that have a lot of shade, see if you can identify a moss or a fern plant or a club moss. Conifers may be difficult to see around us unless you live in very deep forest areas and stuff. Cycad, unless you have an eye to look at, but I've shown you a picture. So go around, probably have some around you. Then appreciate it. Take your time, break a leaf or a branch, and just study them slowly and write what you see on a paper. Come and compare with your notes. If you don't get it, we'll be here to help you. I hope today we have able to cover the 6 divisions. But if you read books and there are more, don't get worried. Per syllabus, these are the major ones needed for study. They mostly come in the practicals too. So take your time and go over it. We'll have a chance to study moss, have a chance to study fern, and we'll have a chance to study the flowering plant out of the 6 into details. So we'll come your way again. Another topic that may be on animals. I hope you have enjoyed. Go over, when you come back again the next meeting, we'll give you another exciting program. Till we meet again, it has been your teacher or your facilitator, or Sir Kwame Martin, who took you through division of kingdom Plantae. Till we meet again, it's a bye-bye for today. Thank you.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Joy Learning TV.